This is the third part of our video chapter, that is Fritz, and we'll read the second, third, and fourth pages here. Few of the word meanings I'm going to provide, so I expect that you will write down those certain things. I had no objection for having read Tagore's poem, The Fort of Bundi. I was suddenly familiar with the name of the place and felt a pleasurable excitement at the prospect of actually seeing the fort. Not many people came to Bundi, but that did not mean that there was not much to see there. It could be that, from the point of view of a historian, Udaipur, Jodhpur, and Chittor had a lot more to offer, but simply as beautiful place, Bundi was perfect. So there is no problem for Shankar in visiting Bundi. But one thing we have to keep it in mind, it does not have that historical value as Jaipur or Udaipur, which do contain those Rajputana histories. And further, we have to accept the fact this place, which is inferior to Udaipur or Jaipur in case of historical achievements, yet the place is very beautiful. You cannot reject, underestimate the beauty of this place. And already Shankar read a poem of Tagore, that is The Fort of Bundi, that obviously encourages him to be here. However, Jayanto's insistence on Bundi did not puzzle me somewhat. I learned the reason on the train. Insistence, as the meaning is provided here, insisted Shankar to come to Bundi. Somehow he forced Shankar to be in Bundi, which puzzled me somewhat. I learned the reason on the train when we were coming down. Jayanto's father, Animesh Dasgupta, had worked in the archaeological department. His work sometimes took him to historical places, and Jayanto had as a child come to Bundi. He had always wanted to return after growing up, just to see how much the modern Bundi compared to the image he had in his mind. The circuit house was really rather splendid. So what was expected? The circuit house or the guest house, we can also use the term guest house here. It was more pleasurable, splendid than expected. Built during the time of the British, it must have been at least 100 years old. It was a single-storied building with a sloping tiled roof. It does not have a specific roof which one you can climb. It does have that traditional type tilted roofs. That means it looks like this one. That means those traditional houses, as you can see here in the picture here. Further, the room had high ceilings and the skylights had long dangling roofs which could be full to open and shut them. It is more than windows. The large windows are there and you can use ropes to pull the curtain off and on. The veranda faced the east. Right opposite it was a huge garden with a large number of roses in full bloom. Behind this were a lot of trees which obviously housed a vast section of local birds. Parrots could be seen everywhere and peacocks could be heard, but only outside the compound. We had already been on sightseeing tour of the town. The famous fort of Bundi was placed amidst the hill. We had seen it from a distance that day but decided to go back to take a closer look. The only reminders of modern times were the electric poles. Otherwise, it seemed as though we were back in old Rajputana. The streets were cobbled, that means made of stones. The houses had balconies jutting out, that means peeping out from the first floor. These are hanging veranda, or we can say porch. The carvings done on these and the wooden doors bore evidence of the work of master craftsmen. It was difficult to believe that we were living in the age of machines. Everything is handmade, and more than that, everything is beautiful. I noticed Jayanta had turned after quite arriving in Bundi. Perhaps some of his memories had returned. It's easy enough to feel a little depressed when visiting a place one may have seen as a child. Besides, Jayanta was certainly more emotional than most people. Everyone knew that. Jayanta being more emotional, finding the places more beautiful because he's remembering his old old memories. Next, he put his cup down on the table and said, He put his cup down on the table and said, You know, Shankar, it is really quite strange. The first time I came here, I used to sit cross-legged on these chairs. It seemed as if though I was sitting on the throne. It gave him a feeling that he was on the throne. He is not a king, but the situation, surroundings, and his feelings make him as if he is sitting on the throne. The drawing room here used to seem absolutely enormous. If I had returned, those memories would have remained stuck in my mind forever. I said, Yes, that's perfectly natural. As a child, one is small in size, so everything else seems large. One grows bigger with age, but the size of all other things remains the same, does not it? As we grow up, everything looks smaller. The chair we use in our childhood cannot fit us when we grow up. But what we feel, that the chair has grown short. It is not that we have grown big. So the memories are same here. Janto, when saw everything, he was only a 6-year child, and that time everything was different because his mentality was different. Now he is in different age and he is finding everything different. We went for a stroll, that means walk in the garden, that means slow walking on the garden. Janto suddenly stopped walking and said, Devda, name of a tree. I stared at him. A Devda tree? I ought to be here somewhere, he said, and began striding forward. Striding means moving fast, moving with long steps. The far end of the compound. Why did he suddenly think of Devda tree? A few seconds later, I heard his voice examining jubilantly, means happily. Yes, it's here, exactly where it was before. Of course, it's where it was before, I said. Would a tree go roaming about? Jayanta shook his head impatiently. No, that is not what I meant. All I meant was that the tree is where I thought it might be. But why did you suddenly think of a tree? Jayanta stared at the trunk of the tree, frowning, angry. Then he shook his head slowly and said, I can't remember that now. So here lies the twist in the story. Not the twist. Here, the past, flashback of the past. And it is not the flashback. Instead, we can say it is the thunder that is flashing in the mind of Jayanto. Something had brought me near to the tree. I had done something here. A European. European, I can recall anything at all. Memory is a strange business. Who said this? This is said by Jayanto. And this one is said by Shankar. They had a good cook in the circuit house. Later in the evening, while we sat at the oval dining table having dinner, Jayanta said the cook they had in those days was called Dilawar. He had a scar on his left cheek and his eyes were always red, but he was an excellent cook. Jayanta's memories began returning one by one soon after dinner when he went back to the drawing room. He could recall where his father used to sit and smoke a cheroot, where his mother used to knit, and what magazines lay on the table. And slowly, in bits and pieces, he recalled the whole business about his doll. It was not the usual kind of doll little girls play with. One of Jayanto's uncles had bought for him from Switzerland a 12-inch long figure of an old man dressed in traditional Swiss style. Apparently, it was very lifelike. Although it was not mechanized, it was possible to bend and twist its limb. Its face had a smile on it, and on its head it wore a Swiss cap with a little yellow feather sticking out from it. It was clothes with little. It was clothes Its clothes, especially in their little details, were perfect. Belt, buttons, pockets, collar, socks. There were even little buckles on the shoes. So beautifully crafted all. His uncle had returned from Europe shortly before Jayanta left for Bundi with his parents. The little old man had been bought in a village in Switzerland. The man who sold him had jokingly said to Jayanta's uncle, he is called Fritz. You must call him by this name. He won't respond to any other name. So we can see the major theme of the story has appeared here. Thank you.